The Ensemble podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. This content is created in partnership with our sponsor, Zurich Australia Limited, ABN 92 000 010 195 AFSL 232 510, and is limited to publicly available information. Before acting on any general advice, you should consider whether appropriate and obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor. Ensemble does not hold an AFS license and does not provide any financial advice or services or endorse any general advice. If a PDS or IM exists, you should obtain a copy and review it thoroughly before making a decision.
Hi, I'm Andrew Rocks from Ensemble, and I'm thrilled to be bringing to you the podcast Engine Room that's devoted entirely to the practices or the business of financial advice. Over the course of the next many months, we're going to be interviewing Australia's best independent boutique advice firms, their practice managers, their GMs, on what environment is conducive to being a best practice, how they keep talent, how they attract talent, and what the future of financial advice is. It's the Engine Room podcast. Welcome aboard.
Zurich is proud to be supporting this episode. The Zurich and OnePath Advisor portal is more efficient than ever before, giving you access to 2 leading brands with 3 highly sought-after products, underpinned by 2 powerful underwriting engines, all with 1 simple sign-on, making it easier for you to do business and perform at your best.
Hi, welcome to the Engine Room podcast from Ensemble. I'm Andrew Rocks, and I'm going to spend the next little while with a great practice manager. The whole purpose of the Engine Room is to promote the business of the business, and we're working through some of Australia's leading practices, both existing and also visionary, to find out what makes those practices tick. And I'm here today with Ramsbotham, and he's from Coastal Advice Group. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, Roxy. Thank you very much. Now, in your preamble, you told me that this is where my opportunity exists to either keep people or lose people on this podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, if I am starting to lose you here, the best is yet to come, so stick with me.
Yeah, so desperation is not really a usual selling tactic that we endorse, but I think that the term is authentic vulnerability, and that you've heard it here. So I suppose just to kick things off, and it's always good to get a bit of a feel for the people. And I know that you've been on an Ensemble podcast before. Just give us a bit of an idea more about how you've managed to get to the role of practice manager or general manager within your group, how you got there on your journey, please.
Sure. So I started with Coastal 2 years ago. The role that I'm in at the moment of group general manager encompasses all of the whole multiple disciplinary business that we run up and down the East Coast. Where I've come from.
Just to clarify, the East Coast of where?
East Coast of Australia.
Right.
New South Wales. So my backstory is I have been in financial planning, financial services since I was but a babe. This is where I landed following a stint at university that I thought was going to be my bag, but really didn't end up being what I wanted to do. As you find with most people, I fell into financial services, but I didn't just fall into financial services. I fell in love with financial services, and I really, really enjoy what I do. I did a brief stint as an advisor. I then had an opportunity following success over there to go with a manager at the time into product distribution land as an opportunity. He asked me to come along with him, which I grabbed the opportunity with open arms. And that's where I remained for the next 15 or so years.
Wow.
From, little baby BDM floundering away with next to no idea what he was doing, but a really positive attitude about it, all the way through to spending the period prior to moving into this role as the strategic partnerships manager for AIA. So I looked after all of the national licensee relationships and platform relationships for AIA.
So you kind of had a bit of an advantage in that you've been assessing your potential long-term suitors from that particular perspective. And when you said you fell in love with financial planning, I almost threw in some sort of swipe gag, but I thought I'd leave that there because you've already pulled the desperation card much earlier.
Leave me alone.
So then you getting a decent lens across all practices.
Yes.
And where were you located?
I did a stint in Sydney. I thought that during the formative years of my career, it'd be silly of me not to be able to do all of the extracurricular, meet the people, build the network in the industry to make sure that.
Very topical with people. I speak to a lot of people who worry about their young people not working from home all the time, and you've just sort of, I suppose, inadvertently summarised why it's good to have a healthy mix of both.
Absolutely. And I hand on heart, would say that was a key to the success at that particular point in time, because I really put myself out there. I was young and had a lot of time on my hands and didn't have kids like I do now, and it was pretty easy to go out for Friday drinks and go to all of the industry events and go to everything that I was invited to or invited myself to invariably. But that was a core part of it. I now live on the Central Coast and have done for a long time. That's where I grew up and where my formative years were. I found myself couch surfing most weekends and just spending bulk rent in Sydney and spending most of my weekends on the Central Coast anyway. So it made sense. But the flexibility of the role and the way that the BDM role worked for me just meant that if I was spending the right amount of time client-facing, I didn't need to be in the office anyway. So if I was happy to do the hours and happy to do the Ks, it didn't matter where I positioned myself.
And the coastal business wasn't a startup. It had been around for some years. And was it a case of you went to them and presented sort of a role and opportunity, or were they actively looking at that stage?
Oh, mate, they were hunting me. Come on. So I've known Daniel for 10 years of that element of my career, and just as I've watched Daniel go through the throes of his evolution. I first visited him while he was an advisor with his uncle at Newcastle Financial Planning and an older business in the Junction prior. 10 years down the track, we find ourselves at a point where I had been his BDM for a long time. He'd seen what I had done and what I was focusing on doing in my career and trying to differentiate myself from your regular BDM that comes out, drops a brochure. This is a generalization, sorry, BDMs. But, the perspective would be there is some very, very good BDMs out there, and a really, really good BDM does stand out because they are not just there to to peddle their own wares, peddle their own agenda. They have an acute awareness of the business, awareness of the desires, the growth plans, the pain points, the frictions, all of the things that you can actually assist them to bring best practice into the business on a completely selfless basis.
I think you're right. I think the best BDMs do actually have that consultative approach, which is why there's quite a few people who've made careers out of it. They've changed providers, they've changed the label, but they still retain those relationships because of the value that they've added.
Absolutely,
would be my thoughts, and many names spring to mind. So you've now, can I ask, and this is a great question to get out of the way, what do you refer to the title of your role? Because as part of this podcast, we're trying to sort of promote practice managers, general management. What's your title?
So my title is Group General Manager of the Coastal Advice Group. Group General Manager because it is not just a financial planning business. It is a multidisciplinary business, and the hub and spoke model that we have built, or that I've built since starting, means that there is multiple different aspects, brands, and businesses that fall under that one umbrella.
Well, maybe let's lift the lid on that. So you've got the Coastal Advice Group, and you said that you group, which is means there's a few disciplines. Maybe give us a bit of an idea. I'd love to know about your organisational structure, your ARs, how you structure them, how you structure their support. The reason is if I was working for you, what would I expect? I suppose is the best way of answering this. So where do you sit now?
Okay, so that's a really big question to unpack. Really big question. So the people pieces...
We did speak about it earlier.
We did, I know, but you've sideswiped me now. So at the moment, we're sitting at circa 50 staff. We also have offshoring arrangements for both administrative services, and SOA production and delivery. The AR numbers at this particular point in time is at 11.
Yeah. So 11 of the 50 are authorised representatives.
Authorised representatives, 10 of those being wealth advisors with a flick of risk in there. We have one advisor that looks after all risk-only clients separate to that.
Okay. And what do the rest? How do you organise the support? You know, this is your jam.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started, the business now due to the size, we got to a point where we've moved away from the genesis of the business, which was Daniel with a couple of people. Everybody's doing a lot of stuff, doing it okay, but not really well. And everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yep.
And to Daniel's credit, he is a serial entrepreneur. That's why you and him get along so well, Roxy. He is very, very good at blue sky thinking and new concepts and growth and all of that sort of stuff. But, you know, there's some vulnerabilities as well, and some of the things that he was lacking. He was really open to, realised, and then has started to build out a team around him, which absolutely to him is a credit to him being able to look inwardly and go, you know what, as much as I'm good at driving the growth of a business, I can find the opportunities, but I need somebody else to put it all together for me.
And so how did that land? So how are you organised now in order to be able to deliver? So you've got your strategy. How do you execute for these 11 ARs who are lucky enough to find themselves at Coastal?
Perfect. So we've moved from the generalist to one of our mantras in this business now is right people in the right roles. The right people in the right roles means to us that we should have advisors, 70 to 80% of the time spending their time with or in front of or speaking to or servicing our clients and ensuring that they're getting the value that they deserve from what they pay. So we've broken that out into two completely different channels, one of which I lead, which is the advice channel, which encompasses all of the advisor support, and the marketing side of the business. Then we've got an engine room and an operations arm of the business, which is headed by my counterpart and a fantastic resource and a very, very good employee in our business, and also a partner in the business, Nicole Mundy, who absolutely on this podcast I will give credit to.
Oh, Nicole was my first choice.
Yeah, absolutely. She wasn't available today, sorry. So we now have two really defined arms of the business with management and an accountability chart that goes both ways as to what roles, outcomes, and specific big rocks people have to work on a 60, 90, 180, 360 sort of basis.
And tell me, like you just said, you've an ambitious target of having your ARs or your financial planners spending 70% of their time with clients. And, if I did a straw poll off every financial planner, that's sort of bordering on fantasy. So is that one of your sort of big rocks how did you convince them to let go when you were doing the change management? Because as you said, the business has evolved and many practices out there really want to be able to do that statement, but their advisor wants to do a little bit of power planning. The power planner wants to still maybe do a bit of admin. How did you do that change management?
It's still happening, and it's one of those things that come with human nature, right? Even throughout my career, there's certain things that you find it hard to let go of because there's just a certain way that you like them delivered. One of the things that we've really become conscious of, though, is that I think you call it, do you call it highest and best use, I think is your term for it?
Yeah. But the right people doing the right things at the right time is also just another awesome way of saying it.
I like to call it highest positive purpose. So I like people to be working towards their highest positive purpose and where they can add value. One of the things that I like
goals-based team membership rather than goals-based advice.
Correct.
There you go.
What I like to reinforce is on one side, if the culture of our business, I really feel as though we have one big happy family. And I think that if you canvassed any of the people downstairs from where we are today, they'd probably agree. One of the things that I think people struggle to remember is that if you are not working to your highest positive purpose, you're probably actually hurting the person that you're sitting next to. You are taking away their opportunity to shine in what is their highest positive purpose. If you're holding on to work that you shouldn't be doing, that they would thrive at doing and stand out, you're actually hamstringing them from really shining.
Maybe give us a couple of real world examples, say in a practice. Well, what would be things that you've taken off people or what tasks as an example?
So we're really fortunate in this business that we have incredible people, and we've designed it in a certain way so that there is a really cascading effect to the different arms of the business, which has a couple of benefits, I suppose. One of which is a really clear career trajectory for anybody working within the business, but also a very specific skill set of the person sitting next to you. So an example would be an advisor, much like a accounting practice or a legal practice. In our big, hairy, audacious goal of 70 to 80% client-facing time, our expectation is that we book a specific amount of time for an advisor meeting, which should encompass enough time for them simply to do the file note, goals, strategy, and scoping for the plan, and walk out and simply be able to have somebody that is trained, educated, and skilled enough sitting, I won't say behind, but next to them to just pick that up and run with it. And it's then their opportunity to really wow via turnaround times, data, client outcomes, feedback. It's for them then to take hold of that and really wow the business and the clients with the outcomes that they deliver, rather than the advisor holding on to it and not following that highest and best use.
And do you, so the first thing is that clearly you didn't walk out of a meeting during COVID and give it to someone else. So in relation to running a team that, is potentially, and I will ask a question around hybrid work, and you've got, just to clarify a few other ones, how many offices do you have?
We've got 4 at present.
Yeah, and geographically, how far apart are they from each other?
Significantly. This is Australia after all. It's not, so we've got, we do have a serviced office in Sydney, so we could call it 5, but predominantly our practices are on the Central Coast, Newcastle, Port Macquarie, and Byron Bay, Ballina.
Right. So there's a fair drive. So you must trust in your systems and technology, and maybe as a headline, but what type of advice? I mean, what type of advice do you typically give? What's your avatar?
That's a good and very broad question again. So that's another benefit of a business with scale, is that I have an advisor demographic from late 20s to late 60s, male, female, with all sorts of different specialties. So for me, there's lots of disparate avatars available within the business for me to be able to say, and I know that it sounds a bit cheap, but we can literally take all comers. It's not that one advisor will do it, but irrespective of the advice specifics or the strategy to be employed, I have somebody that specializes in some way, shape or form. And the beauty of that is that it allows the person to inwardly look, discover what that avatar is, and that can be their thing. You don't have to fit into a specific mold to be an advisor for the Coastal Advice Group. If you've got a specialty, a desire, and it makes sense, go ahead, spread your wings, and I'll try to enable it for you.
And just to clarify, your advisors, is it an employed model? Are they employees of the overall group, or are they they've got their own sub businesses? What's the structure of how they're engaged with you guys?
At present, we have 5 shareholders.
Yep.
So there is a mix of shareholder employee and straight employee.
Okay, so but they're all employees. Okay, because I do know that from memory you guys have acquired and absorbed businesses and whatnot. And in order to be able to have that level of ARs and do the all the requirements for reviews and whatnot, you mentioned that how do you nail your advice process? Maybe I'll just start with your licensee or you're self-licensed.
We're licensed. Yeah, we're licensed via RI Advice under Insignia.
Okay, and how long has that been Okay.
A long time since the inception of the Coastal Advice business.
Okay.
Way back when. That was we've been with them for a long time, and to be honest, we have a really, really strong institutional commercial partnership with the RI Advice guys, and we don't see the need. There's a lot of talk in the marketplace about self-licensing and positives, pitfalls. We're in a really strong partnership with the Insignia guys, and has been fantastic.
There you go. I hope they're listening. So, even maybe your desperate plea at the beginning has kept them this long. So, and how do you generate the advice? I mean, what's the process? Is it all? I mean, is it digital advice? You said you've got like some outsourcing pay-per plan. You've got have you got an Australian-based paraplanning team as well?
We don't. So we run in our business. So we're really big proponents of trying to find the best of the best. And we've worked really heavily over the last couple of years to try to go out and absorb all of the best practice that there is in the marketplace from the most weird and wonderful places that we possibly could. It's an investment and it costs, but we've come back with some unbelievable takeaways. The way that we structure it is we run a diamond. So diamond teams were a big buzzword a little while ago, where you've got a lead advisor at the top, and you've then got two associate advisors or advisors under them and a support person.
Okay. Yep.
We run in this business what's called a house structure.
So keep talking. I thought you were going to go run with cubic zirconia, but no. House structures is still good.
Same, but different.
Right.
So it has a lead advisor at the top. So our predominant goal would be to have every advisor, every house running in excess of $1.5 million worth of annual recurring revenue.
Yep.
With a lead advisor at the top, working with clients on a segmented basis. So they're more of your high net worth.
Yep.
And then supporting and doing, some of that finding, originating and conversion work. So you'd have a real mix of a lead advisor at the top that is multidisciplinary, quite experienced, and has a bit of responsibility. They play a branch manager or team leader type role, supported by two advisors underneath who they help to originate and convert leads, with two support people underneath them, with a bit of a career trajectory through it. So one of the support people are generally doing a more of a CSA type role. The other would then be taking the next step into a more strategic advice delivery, pseudo paraplanning role, or strategy role, without actually having to do the minutiae of developing the document.
And you mentioned you do a bit of marketing, and for many years, marketing wasn't really something that financial planners did because they were just struggling to get through the change that's happened regulatory. Does your marketing, so Coastal itself generates a lot of the inquiries, or is it reliant on those partners? Because it sounds like if you're managing $1.5 million worth of revenue and you're retaining that, it's pretty hard to go out and have a bunch of spare time. So what does Coastal do to assist with bringing in those clients?
So there's some really strict metrics that we run to. We've got a fantastic business coach by the name of David Hines, who you may have met. David has had some real success in his career. Anybody that doesn't know David, chuck it into Google, have a look. They say that success is often a path well-travelled, and he's one of those blokes that has most certainly travelled that path. So we've developed out some dashboarding and some metrics that the business really strictly adheres to, and really allows us to make considered decisions around capacity and resource management, and making sure that we do still have the ability to grow. So I've got at any stage the ability to lob some numbers out of our data lake that you would call a data pond, and and chuck them into our metrics, and we're able to work out exactly where we are from a capacity point of view at any particular point in time, so that we can make some considered HR and resourcing type decisions, and we have the ability to plan forward based on our current run rate for any capacity that we'll need. And at present, to be honest, the need is absolutely there. So we will be putting people on, I would suggest, over the next little while, both from a merger and acquisition point of view, but also from an organic growth perspective.
So just to clarify on that, if I'm an advisor, but I don't come with an existing client base, you guys would be open to that because you've got sufficient current and future demand. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's a different type of advisor that can come along and do that. It's a very, very confident, how do I put this in a PC way? A very confident...
Please try.
It takes a really different advisor as an employee to confidently build and convert leads to an extent that allows it to be commercially viable. But if you've got that ability and acumen to get in and really convert, absolutely. We've got an advisor doing it now. So I've got an advisor right now who's just come out of his professional year, who at this point in time is 8 from 8 since the start. 8 from 8 or 7 from 8 since the start of the year, and he's absolutely on fire, meeting all of our minimums. All of them are going on to ongoings, and he's an absolute gun. But he's a bit of a unicorn. But absolutely, the opportunity is there.
And I suppose I just changed tack because we've spoken about your licensee. They're one of your stakeholders in your success, and it's always good to give a shout out. Mm-hmm. Another key part of people's success is the tech stack that they're operating. So what's the tech stack look like at Coastal? Not just for financial planning, but the overall group.
There's a couple of parts to that. We, due to the size now, are working a lot heavier on what we need to do from a tech point of view. It's not going to be tenable for us to continue running the way that we are.
And what's your incumbent? What does that look like?
It looks like multiple disparate spreadsheets and data points being pulled from all sorts of different places, which is cool.
And you've got the standard RI advice generation, IRIS stuff.
And that's the only one. That's the only one hamstring I would suggest is just when you are with a licensee like that, you get their iteration of X plan. You're open to or closed up by what data they are prepared to share and not, and how they're looking to synergize with any of the other third parties out there.
But the flip side is you don't have to pay for it all to be done.
Correct.
Self-license, you have that, but potentially you're paying. It comes at a price.
Absolutely. And we do get fantastic, we've got some great guys in RI that if we do need anything, they will do their utmost to get the information to us, but it does start to become a little time intensive. But to their credit, we're working with a couple of tech providers at the moment. We've got
Any names?
We're looking at Zeppo at present. Paul Campbell, we're talking to Zeppo. I run 3 different scoreboards out of this business. One for the team, another from a management perspective, and then I put together a balanced scorecard, which is the individual advisor KPIs and metrics for the year.
So is that a built or off-the-shelf piece of technology?
I built it myself, yeah. So I'm looking, the amount of time that it takes me to pull all of that data together out of our data lake is just monumental and getting bigger and bigger considering the growth of the business. So we're looking to have to automate that sooner rather than later, and we're in the midst of that as we speak.
Awesome. And then the other thing is just getting a bit of a feel for, you mentioned you've got some employee shareholders.
Yep.
And in a second, I'm going to get you to tell us about your people and culture, things like, is there ESOPs? Is there, because these days, talent is your greatest resource and your greatest cost. Yep. Okay. And running your people really well and making sure they hit their goals is a fundamental pillar of being a best practice. You can't get to a large number of people who are retained unless you're doing something right.
Yes.
So I'd be very interested to hear you've got your shareholders, you've got these people, you've got them from different areas. I'd like to hear how you bring people in how do you culturally assimilate someone if you've gone and bought a practice. Maybe at the end we'll see if you're in the market for buying new ones, if anyone's out there or whatnot. So I'll reframe this. So let's say that I wanted to work for Coastal. What makes you guys special? What makes you different? And try and be relatively clear on this, because what we're hoping to achieve with this series is getting the best and most appropriate talent to work their way to the best and most appropriate practices.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what makes you special?
That's a good question. Can I add something to the last one first? I've taken note of your whole question. I want to add, as part of the tech stack, something that I think is really, really important.
Go for it.
We've got a part of the tech stack. It's available through Insignia, but it's replicated elsewhere. It's called Wealth Central that we use. The others, the likes of Lumient, which is the great and powerful Santi Burridge. There's My Prosperity, all those sorts of different iterations out there. What we have found from an efficiency and a client engagement point of view, value is moving away from talking about 2 A4 pages worth of returns and putting them in front of a client when they walk into a meeting. Gone are the days when you derive your value from individual line items and what they're returning. The cash flow modeling, the central communication hub, the security, the goals and aspirations, the values-based conversations that can come out of software like that, we have found huge in this business. So I wanted to touch on that because I thought it would be left unsaid.
No, well,
a core tenet of what we do.
You know that Wealth Central is close to my heart. I used it in my practice.
Yep.
I worked with Tim, the founder, and I was passionate about that. Clients only perceive the value they see. So they're not overly concerned that you've had to spend 24 minutes on hold to Centrelink or on hold to one of the product providers. What they care about is what they see. And I think that, when you mentioned quite a few variations there, and I think it's a vital part of not just obtaining but retaining clients, and also making your team feel really happy about what they're delivering. So thanks for that. But the other part of people and culture is if you give your team the best tools, they're going to be happier to start with.
Yep.
But over to you. What
highest and best use? That's it. So look, as far as why would you work at Coastal Advice? We're at a point now where I think when you get to the size and scale that we are, with the really defined roles. We've got things like just some of the philosophies that we've got. A clearly written, documented remuneration philosophy, which outlines where based on your job grade and your role and your experience, where you should expect to be and what you should expect to be paid.
So into the future. So you're giving them a career path when they start?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we've got that documented out. So where you would start at a baseline, or where you would expect to be, and what the remuneration would be at that point. What the key achievables or core competencies at that point would be, and then what your trajectory looks like, both from a aspirational career point of view, but also from a remuneration point of view. So we're really, really transparent as far as what that looks like, not just from the pure dollars aspect, because you and I both know that it's not just about dollars, it's about wanting to turn up at the same time.
And how do you find those regional markets? Are you sourcing most of your team from the local area in those towns that you mentioned, or not, or what's your experience?
Yeah, we are actually. I think that there's based on some of the movements in the market recently, with banks getting out and some of the larger instos making some of the moves that they are, there's some really good talent around and available if people know that you're around and know that you're available and you hold yourself out there as a decent place to work.
Yeah.
And I think that some of the things that we have and some of the visibility that we have based on our footprint and what we do with social media and advertising and sponsorship and community events and community work and that sort of stuff hold us in that sort of esteem and reflects the culture and persona of the business to be a bit of a draw card.
Maybe give a couple of examples of those points.
Right. So from not just an employee onboarding, but from a client onboarding point of view as well, we would regularly get a resume through the door from somebody hearing, looking, aware of us and what we do, having come across us previously. We are on a couple of buses up in Newcastle. We sponsored the Knights last year. We sponsor the local bodyboarding club. We just sponsored the Hunter Melanoma Research Institute and attended their 35th birthday fundraising charity fundraising event. We really put ourselves out there. Locations like this tend to be quite parochial.
Right.
We focus on the regional areas outside of capital cities, and you would know you're from Tamworth, right?
I wish I was from Tamworth. Tamworth was the place to went to on holidays, but I get it's we're out, western New South Wales. That's right.
Right. So I'm the same. I'm a country boy born and bred. I grew up in my younger years in Tenterfield. So I'm a small town.
And you didn't become a saddler despite the song.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you find that the Central Coast, Newcastle, Port Macquarie, they are all still big country towns and uber parochial. And if you are seen to be, which we are, and we happily do, to be supporting the local community, you end up in the spotlight, right?
So a couple of things from that. I mean, the same conversation could be had in regional Queensland towns or down south at WA. Victoria's got really big parochial towns all through there. And is the decisions around sponsorship and just support, is that a collaborative exercise? So, if I'm an advisor, is there forums where I can sort of say I'm interested in that? How does that work? What's your policy for having that sort of feedback in the business?
Absolutely. We had a marketing budget the year before last, and we put it to the vote. For example, the best example that we've got is that we sponsored the Central Coast Mariners, and that was a joint collaborative decision via open forum. We have a marketing budget to spend. What's the highest and best use of these marketing dollars? Would you like to be able to, on a family to family, person to person basis, like to be able to take your clients out, rub shoulders with them, build a relationship, show some value, but also be able to show some value in the community and what we're doing in supporting some of the things that they do. And that was made by the team. That was ratified by the whole team.
And I'm really interested in how people, there's a whole adage of hire slow and fire fast. We're not here today to talk about firing, but I'm really interested in different people's approach to hiring, regardless of the role. What's the approach? How do you guys, what's your process? And, do you use psychometric testing? Do you not? Do you do panel interviews? Just give me a bit of an idea of what you guys do, not just to bring people in, but also to defend the existing culture.
Yep.
Right? Because you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Agree.
So what's the coastal process?
So we've had, that's a real learning that we've had over the last little while. Me specifically, I've come from a position where I have managed some people, most of those chosen for me previously, and not somebody that I'd hired. So that's been a real learning for me and a real growth over the last couple of years. I won't say a couple of mistakes were made.
But I hope you do, because that's the truth.
Because it's not a mistake; it's a learning, right? You never make any mistakes; they're just opportunities to learn. And I learned from them.
What have you refined it to now?
We have gone from, it's all about your viewpoint of it too. When you believe that things are scarce and that you need a solution, and if you don't take this solution that's right in front of you, you're just going to miss the opportunity. You change your mindset to one of abundance, and that there's people out there, and that you've done all of the work on your brand and your business, that you are in a position where you can command the type of people that you want. It fundamentally changes the way that things work out too. So we now put them through. We have previously used some recruitment directly. We use centers of influence and some of the relationships that we've got around to find opportunities as well. Otherwise, it's recruitment or ads out on Seek and those types of things. And they go through a 2-interview, then DISC Prova profiling.
Okay.
Because we have the ability now, based on the type of personality, to put them, to really shuffle the deck chairs around a little bit and make a home for somebody if they're the right culture fit, which is the most important part. If they're a right culture fit, but they have a certain skill set that we need to move things around to make that work, we're absolutely able to do it. So as long as they meet the pub rules of they turn up, they do good work, and they're a pretty decent person, we're going to be okay to be able to manipulate the system in some way, shape or form to make sure that the right people get into the right spots and are supported the right way to do their highest and best.
And look, I'm a big fan of using the psychometric testings because the last thing you want to do is set people up in an environment where they fail, because that's kind of not just their fault, it's yours as well.
Set a farmer up as a hunter.
That's it, yeah. Or something along those lines. And the other aspect is, like, how do you onboard someone? So say, for instance, this is about practice management, but getting the people right is important.
Yes.
So you've got to find the right people. You've given me an idea that they know how to find you. You've given me another idea of how you filter them, but then how do they start? Because geez, that first 3 days, 30 days, 69, they're very important. How would you onboard regardless of the person? Is there anything specific? Do you have a culture kind of onboarding component to it? I know today we're doing a session and the rest of your team, the reason it's so quiet in your office is they're doing boxing.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if that's Dan's performance appraisal. I haven't actually dug deep into the type of boxing.
It may be. I may miss out on a bonus or a pay increase this year because I didn't go.
But back to onboarding, how does it look and how do they, what's the structured approach to bringing them into your culture?
Okay. I don't think my personal viewpoint is culture is something that you do every day. It's not something that you roll out, right? So my opinion is that another thing that we've really had to develop is the onboarding process that we go through. And we felt
now
I can fall on my sword and say happily to any of my employees that are listening now that probably came in a year ago, I'm sorry for what that looked like. We did not have a written, detailed processes and procedures manual. We had a lot of key person risk and a lot of stakeholder risk, whereas we now have a written procedures manual. We didn't have a line-by-line project plan, onboarding type project plan with day one getting everything set up, what your week 2 looks like with shadowing advisors, learning about the investment philosophy, how we use the systems, shadowing the operations team to make sure that they understand exactly how the rhythms of routines of our fixed price agreements work, and the dates that they need to use and what goes where, and the tasks and all of the things that go into the minutiae of what needs to happen behind the scenes. You get the right person on and you go, yeah, you're a great advisor. Strategically, you can give solid advice. That's not enough, because the business works in such a way that there's a lot behind. Once you scratch the surface, there's a lot that goes on in a financial planning practice, a lot of it enabled by technology. A lot of that technology may not have been used by this individual before because they're coming from a different business, licensee, operating model, whatever it might be. You need to make sure that rather than throwing people in the deep end, you give them the best opportunity for success. And I can hand on heart say that we didn't do that at the start, but again, it wasn't a failure, it was a learning. And we learned from it, and we did very quickly because you get that feedback. So we've put together a really rigorous, documented now onboarding process when people come on over about a month period to really get them into the rhythms, routines and cadence of what we do, and they've got a Bible to refer to at any stage if they're stuck, but they've still got, 50 people around them that you're going to be able to find the answer somewhere as well.
Thanks. And then just looping back, when you were talking about the type of business, are you a multidiscipline practice? Do you do other things outside of financial planning? Or what are the other offerings that your business has, and how do you run the delivery and the people in those offerings?
We saw a risk and an opportunity. I think it's been spoken about ad nauseum, that the opportunity of a hub and spoke type multidisciplinary practice is huge, not just for the opportunity for different channels and different types of revenue into the business, but also to ensure that your clients aren't having to go elsewhere to seek the services and potentially be referred to somebody else. We love our clients. We do goals and value-based advice, and to be able to handle all of that inquiry, to be able to knock all of that on its head within the Coastal Advice group of companies was a huge driver of mine.
And how do you do it?
How we do it is we have the financial planning business. Within Coastal Advice Group, we have a specialist life insurance arm, a fantastic lifelong insurance advisor in our business who gives specific insurance-only advice.
So your financial planner, when they get to the specialist insurance advice, would then, they're almost the general practitioner, and they go to the specialist to come in to give that, and you both deliver that to the client.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just like a GP, right? If you needed open heart surgery, you wouldn't go to the GP. If you need a mole removed, you can though, right?
Yeah.
Same premise. Yeah. If the wealth advisor has a bit of life insurance, a bit of TPD, and something fairly standard that they need to write, they can and are empowered to. Yeah. But when it starts to get a bit technical, we have that expertise, we have that ability. We also then run a mortgage and lending business, powered by, and power is the operative word, powered by Lydian. Roxy, where the partnership that we have with Lydian and your business on that side, I'm not going to do the proverbial, but we have an outstanding professional partnership with Lydian. Lending, especially in today's world, is a core deliverable for a financial planning practice around any type of bucket strategy, cash flow strategy. The whole ecosystem of somebody's world at the moment is being flipped on its head by the way that the world's working. So for us to be able to handle that in-house, internalize the conversation, walk away and have all of that delivered and the ability to control the narrative and the outcome to a certain extent was of huge importance to us as well.
Awesome. And what about when it comes to one of the other pillars, the accounting and legal, how do you handle that?
So legal, we have multiple geographically based vetted partnerships and centers of influence. The same with accounting. Accounting with an asterisk behind it, because we have internalized the self-managed super fund admin, accounting and audit functions via another third-party arrangement.
And who's that, if you don't mind me asking?
There's a business on the Central Coast, a connection of mine that I used to work with named Matt. He owned the accounting arm of the first financial planning practice that I ever worked with.
There you go, relationships.
And we are working together now to build out this whole program within the business. Anybody that would like to entertain something like this, Roxy will be able to pass on my details. I'm sure that they'll be somewhere where you can find me on LinkedIn. I would happily do a warm introduction to Matt and his team to ensure that you can stand up the same thing in your practice if it's something that you'd like to do.
So it's like sort of getting a consultant in, but it's still you retain the asset value, you bring in the smarts and the execution. Is that right?
Yeah, and again, we work in parallel with each other.
Yeah.
So I am aware and confident and comfortable with the service that's delivered, how it's done, the timely way that it's performed, what the client should expect to see, what they will provide us, what we will provide them, and it is just seamless. And it is done at a cost that is about 20 to 30% down from what they can expect to see in market.
There you go. So that and is this the sort of business, Coastal, where majority of the clients come through the financial planning and then cascade out, or do they start in other divisions, or do you get a lot of accounting leads? Give me an idea of is it? I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but is it it's a financial planning first, cash flow? Is that exactly the process?
We're now a business that provides financial planning. We're not a financial planning business. We're a business that provides financial planning, lending, and the SMSF services that we do. Because of our core competency and what the business has been doing for such a long time, yes, I agree that right now, in the absence of our ability to have really worked on the marketing side of things for Coastal Super Admin and for Coastal Mortgage Group, they're not really a revenue generator. They're a servicing arm at the moment. However, I really foresee some growth in that area over the next little while as we put our foot down. It is just another ability to differentiate yourself. And from a marketing point of view, the the SEO opportunities, the authority opportunities online that you get from being able to present those types of services, absolutely they can be a feeder to the company as a whole.
And look, I'll give you a shout out as well. I know that I hear feedback from our Lydian business that the clients that come through, particularly our strategic relationship with H&R Block, are really well serviced from that overall perspective within your group. So big thanks to you on that, because it's a big job, and we were looking for a good partner.
Pleasure.
Now, thank you for giving us an overview of where you're at, a bit of a feeling for the fact that it's very much a local business. You've outlined the sponsorship. I would like to ask you your vision for the future for a couple of aspects. The first one is a vision, the vision for the future of the industry, the future of Coastal, and where you see the role of general manager or COO being positioned in the practices of the future. So industry, Coastal, and where you see that.
Okay, so the industry, wait and see. QAR, was very, very happy, as I'm sure you were, to see some of the suggestions that came out of that. We'll just see how that goes now.
And we won't talk too much about that, because if this podcast comes out after this is handed down, we don't want to be caught with our pants up, down, or sideways.
Correct. So, and that's why I thought I'd leave it there. I don't want to go into any conjecture there, but I think what we're starting to see in the way that our business runs and the way that the industry's going, I think the industry's probably moving towards exactly what I was just talking about. There is a lot more businesses now starting to move into a position where they are, rather than a financial planner, trying to run a business and not having a lot of time to spend on the business, just being in the business and having to keep the wheels turning over. We're getting into a more corporatized model. I believe we're getting into a more corporatized model, or seeing success in a corporatized model where there is a business.
Shouldn't be shocked by that. I mean, this is the birth of financial planning really happened with the advent of compulsory superannuation in 92. But accounting firms, we've always looked at it. So they've got mid-tier firms, and I think that it's not going to be for everyone, and maybe it mightn't be perfect in some of the small regionals, but the organisational structure, very much so, I'm in agreement.
Mate, you talk about a cottage industry. We're now really the professionalism that has been thrust upon us.
Training wheels are off.
Yep, training wheels are off. I am all for different strokes for different folks. There's going to be lifestyle businesses out there, and it is not the wrong thing to do. If you are the type of advisor that thrives on a lifestyle business where you've got 500, 600, 700,000 worth of revenue, very happy clients that are very close friends as well, you got a couple of core people in your business, the competencies are all there, you're keeping the lights on, everybody's happy, I absolutely, hand on heart, say congratulations to you and keep doing that if that's what makes you happy. On the other hand, there is pressures or headwinds coming to a certain extent that means that in a lot of circumstances, there's going to be a limit to that, where businesses are going to be hit with more and more cost, potentially, we left QAR behind, let's just pretend that's not there. More and more, there has been an overlay of increasing costs and complexity to running a business that means that, some of your margins are squeezed and it makes it a lot harder.
And clients want an experience in their professionals, which is at the equivalent of the experience they just got. So when I go home, I can choose any television stream, I can flick between it, I can get what I want when I want it. And as a professional service provider, we have to be as good as their other experiences, or they're just not going to want to buy what we've got.
And they'll just turn you off like they do everybody else.
That's exactly
instant gratification. They can do that now. You just turn it off.
That's right. So that's and so what about the vision for the so you were getting to the point that the small practices and lifestyle practices have everything, but arguably, if I'm coming to work in Coastal and I'm at Byron Bay, well, I can't see more of a lifestyle destination on this country than Byron Bay. Couldn't I effectively run a business within a business and have that, but with all of the support? Isn't that what you're intimating?
Yahtzee. You've hit the nail on the head, and that is our that's our ongoing strategy at the moment. One of our largest focuses we are looking for. So I'm happy to be open and honest about it. We're looking for a 15% plus organic growth rate from our existing businesses year on year, and we are also looking for strategic acquisition and merger opportunities up and down the east coast of Australia as well.
From when you say the east coast?
From Sydney to the Gold Coast.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So Okay, well that's awesome. And how many of those have you done in the last couple of years, or in your tenure?
7.
7. Okay.
Yeah.
So for those listening, these guys, like they practiced on their employees years ago, they've just practiced on their previous acquisitions. So increasingly, they're getting it more and more right and more refined. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And again, I wouldn't think we've always been pretty good at that. A lot of the initial things that I built out when I came across to the business were to support that, because it's a really different dynamic. Once you've got a core group of people that come across that are used to having been self-employed, having a level of control, making their own decisions, we were always really confident that it was a fundamental shift away from doing that to being an employee. So there's a mixture of things that we do around how we onboard the clients, how we onboard the advisors, and what the deal structure looks like, whether that's a full buyout, whether there's a seat at the table, or there's the opportunities there are endless. But there had to be an ability for them to fold into the business and not to see a wholesale change in the way that they do things. So the structure around empowering them to still have a seat at the table from a shareholder perspective, but then also to still have a leadership and mentoring position, to still be able to make have the forums to make collaborative decisions around how the business is run and all of those sorts of things. We empower that so that you don't, one of the hardest things for a business owner to do coming across is to let go of control.
And does that, on the ground, does that look like, do you do like conferences or getaways, or over and above the licensee ones?
100%.
Yep.
So we did 2 last year. We did an all CAG, a whole business conference last year. We took everybody down to the quarantine station in Sydney.
So not just the advisors,
just the advisors, whole team. We took the advisors then to an offsite up at Byron. We took a cohort away to the licensee conference 2 weeks ago. From a cultural point of view, we do Founders Day, and Founders Day is the day that Coastal Advice was started. We roll it out every year, and
Does Dan give an Abraham Lincoln speech?
No, we do awards though. So we get everybody together, family, friends, the whole lot.
Yep.
From the receptionist to the CEO, everybody comes and brings their family along, including kids. We hosted the whole day, hired out a local surf lifesaving club. We did awards and called out all of our special people in front of their special people.
Yep.
For all of the really special things that they did, which was amazing.
So it brings that last comment brings me to a really fun part of what I'm looking to introduce here is just to give some shout outs.
Yep.
Okay. So we've already spoken about, you've given, is there any one or any team you'd like to give a shout out to? And then we sort of like want to round out with a bit of an idea of people have had a good listen to your business. They can look up the links. If any of this has resonated, exactly what you're looking for. We can sort of bring that one home with some win. But first of all, have you got any shout outs to people that have helped you from a business perspective, from inside Coastal? I think you mentioned coaching before. Go for it.
Yeah. So, I'm a firm believer that your coach is not just your manager, that coaches are everywhere. Your coach is your wife, your coach is your kids, coaches are all around you. You just have to be able to see them for what they are. So ultimately, I'd like to, I've thanked all the guys at Insignia, from Darren Werrett, Pete Ormsby, and all the guys in the PDM team. Our outsourcing partners, VBP, Advice Lab, coaches, David Hines, but coaches for me, thanks to all of the fantastic businesses that I had the opportunity to go out and see during my tenure as a BDM and in distribution, because you guys ultimately, irrespective of what your business makeup was at the time, selfishly, I was able to take some of the unbelievable things that you guys were doing, irrespective of how big or small that they might have been, and integrate and execute into some of the things that I'm doing at the moment. We've got partners like, Liddy and the self-managed super fund team that we've got, but also the internal team at Coastal. Our manager, the manager, Dan Brown, the CEO here, absolute visionary. Nicole Mundy, who I mentioned before. We have our marketing team. You asked me, why would somebody come and work at Coastal? I have a marketing team that last month organically gathered 60 plus opportunities from Google and SEO work alone and booked 47 of those because they were deemed to be an ideal client fit for our business.
And who heads that up?
Stacey Jones. She is an absolute magician. So, why would you join Coastal? Because we, not only from an employee point of view, we support you with growth, where you would like to be and the opportunities within the business because of the scale and the way, the makeup of the business now in general. And as we continue to grow, as you could imagine, and as you've seen, Roxy, those opportunities just become endless. And the things that people can skew into and some of the specialties that you can start to tease out, the goals and aspirations of the people, just like you do as a financial planner, you start to learn more of the goals and aspirations of your employees because ultimately they're my clients. And I get to then...
Very interesting. They're your clients. That's you, because you do have a duty of care. That's the wonderful thing about being a GM or a...
That's why I love what I do. That's why I come from financial planning. I love what I do because I still have the ability to make a real difference. It's just to a different client set now. So I'm really excited. Some of the integrations that we're doing with merger and acquisition and the way that we're doing that with best practice, and really honed our skill and ability there to make sure that all of the things that we're doing are fit for purpose. Everybody feels happy, love, like they've got fair value, they've still got a seat at the table, and we're a one big happy family. And all of the opportunities then from all of the organic stuff that we're doing, the opportunity abounds for any advisor that we take on.
And look, I think I can do your call to action for you. For those of you at home who are playing the word family bingo, that's the 9th time that's referred to family. So I suppose if you're wondering the type of environment and the type of team, it is a family focus. There's they're always talking about bringing the kids, the family. So if that resonates with you, then they're the type of group that really embrace that. It's fair to say across the locations. What were your locations again?
Central Coast.
Yep.
Newcastle.
Yep.
Port Macquarie.
Yep.
Byron Bay, Ballina.
Byron Bay. So if you're aspirational, you're local, you want to stay local, not have to head to the big city to get that big career break, be well worth reaching out to these guys. If family is important to you either now or aspirationally in the future, that sounds that there. And are you still in the market for acquisitions?
Absolutely. So the call to, as an extension to that call to action, anybody out there that they believe that their highest and best purpose is providing fantastic financial outcomes for as many Australians as we possibly can, tired of running a business, tired of compliance pressures, tired of risk, tired of playing HR, finance and everything all together, we now have a business to support you, which will allow you to continue to do that highest and best purpose, to receive your fair value for all of the hard yards that you've put in during the time, but continue to have a seat at the table, continue to have control and continue to grow along with us.
And look, I don't think I could sum it up any better than that. And with that, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank the Coastal Group. And yep, the Engine Room podcast is, as we said, about matching up the right and best quality talent in this country with the most appropriate and best quality practice. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Mate, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and thank you all for listening.